Washington Commanders staff writer Zach Selby joins me to give an inside the organization look at what's going down at training camp. Quarterbacks, defense, receivers, and injuries. We're covering it all on this episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and the new WUSA 9 Plus app. Your CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C. has an app that is a game changer for local news and sports in the DMV. Just download the WUSA 9 Plus app now from your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick. No matter how you're joining us, we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am David Harrison, writer for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, covering your Washington Commanders. My co-host, Chris Russell, not here for this episode, but you can find him on the Russell and Medhurst show on the Team 980 live Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern time or anytime, along with this show on the Audacy app. When we're not there or here, we're on Twitter at DHarrison82, at WrestleMania621, and at LO Commanders. We thank you for making the Locked On Commanders podcast first listen or view of the day. Once again, this podcast sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. All right, guys, and we are joined now by Zach Selby at Zach Selby WC on Twitter. Washington Commander staff writer. Zach, appreciate you joining us. We'll dive right into the topic of the day. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league, right? And the passing game reigns supreme still. No matter what. So because of that, let's start with Carson Wentz and what you've seen from him so far in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we've seen a lot of what we expected to see out of him, right? We've seen some of the good. I think he had a really strong practice today, especially in the latter half of the practice. And we've also seen some of the not so great. We've seen some of the interceptions. We've seen some of the missed throws. Definitely seen his arm strength. I think even when he's missing, he's really airing it out, which is, good to see, because I think that's what a lot of the coaches really want. Scott Turner wants to have this offense be a little more vertical. They have the weapons to do it. Now they have the arm to get to it. I think he hasn't really hit on them too much yet. I think a lot of that comes down to him building the bond with his receivers and his pass catchers. He's been doing a little bit of that with some of the receivers on the side, Jahan, Dotson. Cole Turner talked today about how he's been kind of going off to the side and having a little bit of a connection off the field with Carson, which has helped on the field. Terry, he worked out with Terry in California in that player organized workout. So I think, as it's frustrating to say because we all want it to happen now, but unfortunately it's like a hurry up and wait situation where it's you have to let it build and let it grow and let Carson get more involved in the offense. And I think he's doing that so far. We'll have to see. I usually don't want to put too much attention on what the performance is on the field during practice until after that first preseason game, because I think that's the most realistic bit of action we're actually going to see, which is going to happen in a couple of weeks. But now I think it's going about as I expected it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important, no matter what's being put out there. I know we've had this conversation before as well. Everything's important, everything needs to be annotated, but nothing is definitive just yet. We're just got through with day 7 of practices during training camp, and there's about 7. There might be give or take 1 or more practices before we actually have the first preseason game, like you mentioned. So there's still plenty of time for any kinks to get worked out. But if there's one area that you can isolate, where do you feel like the team needs to see him take his next step forward? Is it going to be more important for him to continue getting in tune with his wide receivers? We've seen him miss Cam Sims on a couple of deep routes, overthrew him, which honestly, if you're going to miss, you want to miss deeper, not shorter, right? But is it more important to get those things worked out, or is the mental processing and reading the field, kind of like what Ron has talked about a little bit, still the main focus at this point in the process?
I mean, I think, the mental part of it is probably going to be key, right? Because if you think about it, I mean, he's only been, if you include all the times he practiced in the offense, it's been about maybe a month total worth of practices, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So I think, and again, I think one of the things we're gonna have to understand with Carson, I think Carson is establishing himself more as a gamer as opposed to like a practice player, because a lot of the things that he does well, like when the lights are on, he shows that he like knows how to like win games. I think as he learns the offense more, you're going to see a little bit more of him being able to take chances, make those plays that we all kind of want him to see. And I think the arm strength, I think he's got that down. I think the receiver stuff, that's just going to come with time. That's like being impatiently patient sort of thing. The offense, I think, is in learning it is going to be the biggest challenge, and that's not a knock against him because it's a very complicated offense, and not just he has said that. Taylor has said that. Fitz, who's probably one of the smartest people who has ever existed in the NFL, has said that. It's a very nuanced offense, and I think it, as much as we would love it, I mean, it's not Madden, right? We're not going to be able to go out here and just sling the ball, to Terry, on every single play on a go route. It takes time to develop that kind of bond and that kind of knowledge about the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, I think everybody who has Terry on their fantasy roster would absolutely love that strategy. And you mentioned, there you go. You mentioned Cole Turner, right? I mean, even Cole mentioned that, reading or understanding the playbook and really learning it and getting into it as a rookie tight end, 5th round pick. Like, he's feeling kind of the pressure of trying to get that thing understood. And, Carson's been in the league a little bit, but he's never seen this playbook until he came to the team, obviously. So more to come from Carson Wentz. Obviously, like you said, you see some good, you see some struggles, some growing pains, we'll call them, but the key is growth, right? So let's talk about the backups, though, for a minute. Have you seen any improvements from Taylor Heinicke compared from this time last year to this time, obviously, this year? And what are your early impressions on the rookie Sam Howell?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to wipe my eyes because I just got blinded by the sun. But no, I think Taylor. The one thing I have noticed more about Taylor is that he seems like he's throwing the football downfield more often. He's definitely trying to air it out until that he can, when he needs to, if he needs to, be able to direct the offense in a way that Scott Turner really wants to see it. And I think that's a good skill to have, is being able to know when to use that arm strength. That's something he worked on this offseason with trainer that actually worked with Carson. He's kind of learned a little bit more about how to air it out a little bit more and kind of extend the offense. I think that was one of the biggest problems that we had last year, in terms of trying to figure out how we can get the offense to go a little bit more vertically. And he's showing that, that they're not all hitting as much as he would want to, but I think he's growing in that part of his game. And that's really good to see. And in terms of Sam Howell, I think the arm strength is absolutely there. You see why he was drafted. You see what they liked in him in terms of his skill set. Because even if you go back to Rivera's days with the Carolina Panthers, they've all of his quarterbacks have been able to throw the ball downfield. At least his starters have. Going back to Cam Newton and some of the other players that have kind of mixed into that lineup with Cam Newton being hurt. So again, it comes down to the experience and the growth with Sam Howell. I don't think he's ready yet to take the field, but I think if in an emergency situation, if he does need to, we hope not, but if he does, he at least have the ability to move the ball downfield and use that arm strength.
Yeah, certainly. And he's a guy that I noticed too. I come in almost every day, and you kind of feel like you see an improvement somewhere in his game, whether it's processing, whether it's getting the ball out quick, or like you said, if all else fails, he's at least got a cannon attached to that shoulder. But like you said, not ready to take starting snaps yet. I know he's getting a lot of love on social media, but he's not quite there yet. We'll give him some more time and let Carson do his thing. Quarterback may be king in the NFL, but defense wins championships still. So let's take a look at the one that we have here in Washington. But first, if you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? The cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. If you love peanut butter, there's a peanut butter lovers bundle available now that is going to blow you away. Like all Built Bars, cookie dough chunk puff and the peanut butter lovers bundle is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and they're tasty. What's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order by using the promo code LOCK15 at Built.com. Thanks again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen or your first view every day. Now back to my conversation with staff writer for the Washington Commanders, Zach Selby. Zach Selby, staff writer for the Washington Commanders, with us here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. And Zach, this may be a quarterback-driven league. We just talked about the quarterbacks pretty good, but the bulk of the draft capital here in Washington has still been spent on the defense with this team. So, Zach, is there anything different you're seeing in this year's defense compared to the 2021 version?
I think they are a little more confident in what they have in the terms of their personnel. I think the biggest example of that is the secondary, right? I mean, you could name a defensive back, and they're probably going to tell you how much better communication is. William Jackson said it's 1,000% better. Bobby McCain said, it takes a lot of time and rest, but that he does see the communication. Going back to William Jackson, he said that he can see, he can often know what Bobby is thinking without really even talking to him. And that's a level of communication that they probably didn't have that much last year because, we had the COVID regulations that were still sort of in place. And, there was less time on the field and then less time in person too, off the field. I think that really also helps as well. And I think, that's a big area for the secondary. They seem to be more in sync. I mean, if you look at I think what was the Monday, the 5 interception practice, that was a great day. I'm actually writing a story about this actually. And it was a great day, but it's also it's also not a one-hit wonder, right? They all showed for the past couple of days that the secondary is definitely a lot better than it was last year. And I think the linebackers, that's a position that's always, got some scrutiny this offseason. But I believe Cole Holcomb feels a lot more comfortable in his Mike linebacker role that he's kind of taken on now. Jamin Davis is more comfortable in his role. The defensive line, obviously, they're still studs. So, I mean, there's really not much more comfortability you can get in that. But I think comfortability and confidence is where this defense is at right now. And that's been really nice to see.
Absolutely. And of course, you've got some young guys, some rookies that were drafted and some undrafted guys too that are hoping to make an impact and earn their way onto this roster. Phidarian Mathis, Percy Butler, and Christian Holmes, all guys who have roles to play on this defense, it seems. And at this point, I'd be surprised if any of the three didn't end up on the 53-man roster, which I think is really a testament to how well this team drafted this year. But which of those three has stood out among his peers the most to you?
I want to say Phidarian, but there's kind of a caveat to it because, yes, practice is not really where you're going to see his impact the most because, I had a defensive line coach back in high school who said that if you're a nose guard / shade technique kind of player and you just kind of hold your ground, you're already doing half of your job. And that's kind of hard to simulate, whenever, you're in control situations, even with full pads in practice. I think Percy Butler is a player that he quietly does his job. He doesn't he didn't say too much, he's not out of place. But whenever he does flash, he flashes in a very big way. He had interception, in that 5 interception day. He was right where he needed to be. And I think that's a really good sign. And backs up the quote that Ron Rivera has been saying a lot about how he expects Percy to be an immediate contributor on this team. I think he threw out I think he's going to be in about 53% of the snaps, which would pretty much make him a starter in many capacities. So I'm interested to see what he does, and what he does not just for himself, but for what he allows the rest of the secondary to do around him. Because then if you have Percy Butler out there who is, got that nickel position locked down. You got Kendall Fuller who can kind of hold down his responsibilities. William Jackson can do the same on the other end. And then you got Cam and Bobby back there, holding down the safety spots. So they don't have to worry about whether Percy Butler can handle his own responsibilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Percy's definitely one of my favorite players that I've been able to watch so far. In fact, on that play where he got his interception on that 5 interception day, I was fortunate enough. I said, I'm going to watch 35 in this rep, and I got to watch him from the snap to the read to the break to the completion of the play. It was an amazing play. Definitely looking good out there. And I noticed that he and Christian actually a lot of times they're talking to each other. So rookies, teammates in the secondary there, they're helping each other out, kind of coaching each other up and talking it through. Phidarian Mathis, though, like you said, I mean, a lot of big space eater. He did have a very nice spin move that I saw during the one-on-one on Wednesday. I was very surprised to see Phidarian Mathis pull out a spin move in the one-on-ones, but he did it well and he didn't fall down, which someone as big as he is to move that quickly and not fall is impressive enough, just to me. Of course, Jamin Davis, the second-year linebacker, former first-round draft pick. Obviously, a lot of people disappointed in what he did in his rookie season. He's kind of said as much in himself as well. I mean, Jonathan Allen has said he has to be disappointed in what happened, but really the message has been moving forward and how are we going to build upon that first year. He said he feels faster during the OTAs. He said he thinks he's playing better. Cole Holcomb has praised him. John Allen has praised him. Now, are these just teammates being good teammates, or do you really think that we've seen Jamin Davis take a step forward towards being a solid linebacker for this team?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I've known Cole, from afar, at least since he really got drafted back in 2019. He doesn't strike me as someone who's going to just, BS you and
Right.
and just kind of blow smoke up somebody just because he feels like he's in the mood for it. I think he really is showing growth because it's not just Cole who's saying that. Rivera is saying that. A lot of the other Jamin's teammates are also saying that. You can see that he feels a lot more natural on the outside and making plays. So I think that's what he did a lot of Kentucky, right? He was able to operate more in space. He was able to make tackles, against some of the more athletic skill players in the SEC. And I think that's what he's going to do for Washington, right? I think he's going to be able to play a little bit more freely than maybe he was last year. And the extra year of experience, that probably helps him so much. And, as much as we all want players, especially first-round picks, to kind of just be immediate impact players going to make all rookie teams and all this other kind of stuff. That's not necessarily always the case because everybody's growth is very different. And with Jamin, I think he's where he needs to be. I don't think he's I don't think he's really unsurprising anybody in terms of like how he's been able to develop so far.
Yeah, and I mean, he's flashed a couple times during training camp as well, and people have been very happy to see him doing so. Looking at the rest of the defense, the secondary got some flack last year, right? So there's some new pieces there, some of the new exciting players that we've talked about already. But let's turn the light on Kendall Fuller and William Jackson a little bit, because those are two guys who, maybe some people don't think they lived up quite to their billing. William Jackson has mentioned being more comfortable in year two, knowing the guys, knowing the scheme, getting his swag back, as he likes to say. But Kendall Fuller has been one of the stars of training camp. So talk about those two guys, the starters, and really what they've been able to do so far.
Yeah, Fuller has been one of my favorite players to watch this training camp, because it seems like he's just, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by this, but he is like just, he's always in the right spot. Like, he always seems to make a play. Whether he's got an interception for himself or he's helping other people get interception, like he did with Cole Holcomb back in, like, I think it was day 2 or day 3. Back when we were on the other side of the field. And I mean, I think it goes down to his film study. I think it goes down to the fact he is really motivated personally to get back. And he didn't even necessarily have a bad year in 2021. But in terms of, like, the interceptions, he didn't get nearly as many. So I think he takes that to heart. So I think he's really I think he could have a really strong year. Again, like, it's hard to say, with training camp and control situations, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was just one of the best players on the secondary again. And in terms of William Jackson, I think the biggest thing, kind of going back to experience, is that he has more knowledge of what he's doing in the system now. Because, a lot of people made a big deal about how, Cincinnati is more of a zone heavy scheme, or more of a man heavy scheme, and then, the Commanders have more of a zone concept, and he seems like he's getting more used to that. He's still been able to use a lot of his man skills to go out there and make plays. I mean, he had a really solid play against Terry McLaurin back during one-on-ones today, where he kind of made a nice little pass break up there. Again, like, that kind of goes into his process of being a man corner. But I think we're seeing a lot more consistency out of him, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of why the Commanders tried to bring him in on a multi-year deal last season, because they really think that he has a lot of potential to follow around a lot of, like, these number one receivers and shut him down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think William Jackson certainly looks more comfortable. He says he looks more comfortable than when you watch him. He certainly looks every part of what he is saying. And then Kendall Fuller, I mean, you mentioned it. You expect Kendall Fuller to play well, but he's doing well even for Kendall Fuller. And then I kind of sent out a tweet on Tuesday about Jonathan Allen winning in one-on-ones. And I said, even for Jonathan Allen, he's winning. And basically what I mean by that is, he's Jonathan Allen, so of course he's going to do well. You expect him to do well. But even for what John Allen is expected to do, he was still winning in those one-on-ones. We are going to wrap up this conversation with Zach with a focus on the offense. But first, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. My first career in life was a real stress builder, and because of it, we always had professionals available to talk things out if and when we needed them, and it was a good thing that we did. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. BetterHelp Online Therapy can help you do that wherever you are. They assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. Life is a team sport and nobody does it alone. BetterHelp does your intake survey, which is simple, direct. There's no wrong answers. You take all the time you want or need, do it privately instead of in the waiting room of some office or building. And when you're done, BetterHelp will find someone who can work with your needs. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You can schedule weekly video or a phone session so you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. And getting therapy every week is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or phone. And BetterHelp understands sometimes people just don't click and makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is still available for those who need it. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/lockedon. You can find Zach Selby again on Twitter at Zach Selby WC, and find his work at commanders.com, including his Hail Mail column, where you guys can send in questions and Zach will give his best effort in answering them. But for now, Zach is here to answer some more of my questions. Our last segment with Zach. Let's turn to the weapons now. From when we talked about Carson, we talked about the defense. Those are kind of the two main themes here this season. Yep. But the weapons, I mean, there are weapons everywhere. But let's talk about the back end of this wide receiver group. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel. You know those guys are there, and even though Dotson still, you don't know fully what he's going to be as an NFL receiver. First round draft pick, he's not getting cut. Nobody's going to try to put him on the practice squad. So who's been most impressive outside of those top three? Because I know we were talking earlier this week, and there's kind of like a top five feel. Like we kind of feel like there's five guys solidified, but then there's some other guys battling. But outside of the top three, who's impressed you the most?
So I look at it last year. They had 7 receivers make the initial 53. And I think that could possibly be the case again this year, because I think they don't want to give up. They want to give up as little amount of these weapons as they possibly can. Yep. And I think in terms of, that bottom, group, which is what position I've been watching a lot, I think Dax has probably been the most impressive to me, because I'm sure he's dropped something, but he has not. I haven't seen him drop a pass.
You might have dropped a couple defenders on some routes.
Seriously. I mean, he's been doing a lot of really good stuff, and I mean, he's reliable. He knows how to get open. He knows how to work against zone coverage, which is really key. I think he's got really reliable hands, and it seems like just no matter who he's catching the ball from, no matter who he's going up against, he just finds a way to get open and just secure the ball. And another thing is, like, he's got the special teams experience too, which could help him out a lot. I know we're still looking for a replacement with DeAndre Carter leaving us, but I think he could do it. I think he's got some of the skills. You mentioned the Hail Mail. Someone asked me about that, and I think if I had to say, it'd probably be between Dax and Alex Erickson. Because I know that Jahan has that ability, but I don't think they're going to regularly put him back there unless they absolutely have to. I think Dax has that. I think he's popped more in camp to me. I think Alex Erickson could still make the team, but I think Dax just continues to impress me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Dax Milne. I mean, this is my second year fully on the Commanders beat. My first year there in person, and I wasn't able to see Dax Milne in person last year because of that. And ever since I saw him in person, I mean, from everything from the footwork, the release, into his routes, everything. I mean, it's all been very, very impressive. Looking forward to seeing more. So the preseason's coming up again. We got a full week of practice and then the first preseason game. And fans, they love seeing the game. They love seeing the action. But towards the end of the game, people kind of get distracted or a little bit bored and kind of turn away. Who's a bubble receiver you think that these fans need to know about to keep tuned into the television screen during the end of these preseason games?
That's a very good question. And I think Jaquez Ezzard has been a guy who has kind of found a way to make a couple of good plays here and there. I think, Mark Michelle, he hasn't done too much so far in camp, but he had a really strong OTA period. So we still got about a month left of camp, so he could still, have a couple plays here and there. Carrick Mcgowan is another guy who has a little bit of a deep threat. He had a really nice catch working with Taylor Heinicke a couple days ago, where he just aired out for like 30 yards, and McGowan just kind of came up and just snagged it with both his hands. I think those three are the guys you really want to watch. McGowan and Ezzard have been in special teams, kind of role as well. Which honestly I think is going to be a big like factor in terms of like who is going to make the bottom of the roster, is who can contribute on special teams with returning punts. But I think those three are a couple guys maybe to watch. Whenever Sam Howell's out there slinging it, he could potentially that probably is going to be his starting lineup with the threes. So I think whoever plays the best out of those three is probably going to end up making the roster.
Yeah, all three guys, the same thing. This has been one of the best groups to watch all training camp. Looking forward to seeing them in the games as well and continuing to see what these guys do. Of course, injuries, a big topic for every team this time of year, but maybe more so for Washington. While many are trying to keep from getting hurt, this team's already got some significant guys injured trying to come back. And then the team unfortunately lost undrafted free agent Drew White, linebacker, to a torn ACL on Tuesday that Coach Rivera confirmed on Wednesday. But the biggest injury watch right now that's kind of undetermined, right, has to be Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
Now, he was on the field for day 7 in pads, which was great. Only completely sat out one portion of the practice, right? He missed the one-on-ones, but did a little bit at least in everything else. What did you think of how he looked in this first padded practice for him of the year?
I think whenever he's on the field, I think he looks exactly how I expect him to look, right? Like, I mean, he had a couple of catches today, I mean, with a little bit of contact, and he looked like it didn't really bother him that much when he was doing individual drills, catching passes. He had a lot of quickness, had a lot of the twitch that you would expect to see out of Curtis Samuel. And then, of course, you had that really sick juke mode he had last week against Bishop St. Juiced. But I think today he looks like as expected. Now, I mean, the key with Samuel is how long can he stay on the field, right? Because I think he hasn't really been on a practice field for 3 straight days, which I get is frustrating. But I also think there is merit in making sure, for the coach's perspective, that they want to make sure he is ready for week 1, because I think he is a really big bonus that you can have for the offense, right? Because if you have McLaurin and you have Dotson and you have Sims, like that's a pretty solid trio, right? But if you have Curtis Samuel to that group, it takes 1 or maybe 2 steps up. So I think, like it's frustrating to see that he's not out there, on some days. But if it comes down to it and he's ready for week 1 and he has, a really big game, I don't think anyone's really going to be caring all that much about the fact that he was out for, a random Monday practice or a random Saturday practice.
Absolutely. This is an early August problem. Let's hope it doesn't become an early September or mid-September problem. I mean, the first rep he took in teams on Wednesday, he just went in motion. He didn't get the ball, didn't go out for a route, nothing, just went in motion across the formation. And the defense had to trust it so much or respect it so much that I think it was Cole Turner. I know it was a tight end. I want to say it was Cole. Ended up wide open for a route that he ended up turning upfield and getting a good chunk of yards on. So, I mean, just having number 10 on the field is important. Zach, we got time for one more question, but I want to turn the lens inward a little bit. Your first time on the show here, at least with me, you got a job that a lot of Commanders fans would covet, right? You're in the building, you're around the team when media guys like me are kicked out, so we don't get to see any of the secret sauce that's going on there. But what's something that fans might be surprised to learn about your daily workflow, or maybe something you were surprised about when you first started off being a staff writer for the team?
That is very interesting. I think in terms of like when I first started here, this is something that I wanted to do since I was like 10 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, you see it, you see all the jobs, you see like, people doing it, like read all the stories and everything. But I was prepared for the work, but I think like people all understand that this is my life, like 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, honestly. Even when we're not doing like in season stuff, like we've got the draft, we've got free agency, we've got the combine, we've got all this other stuff, and then the only time we really have to ourselves is the dead period, and we're using that point to get ready for training camp, and then we're doing it all over again. So I think I think this is something that people need to understand, is that like the grind that myself and like all the other people that work here put in is like it's real. Like it's an insane amount of grind. You really have to love it, because you will be this place will test you, and it like the business itself will throw you out if you don't love the sport and love what you do. So I think for anyone out there who's like thinking about getting into media, trying to get into journalism or anything like that, just like you really go do it. Prepare, make sure that you've got all the other stuff, but also understand that this is a job, that is going to dedicate a large portion of your life to being good at it. And if you really want to be good at it, you got to make the right kind of sacrifices for it.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. I think a lot of people don't understand that everything becomes a job eventually, right? Now, granted, it's a job you can love, right? And that's the best part of it. And certainly you get to see a side of something you love from a different angle, but 60 hours a week, I think minimum.
I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, we had a roster move happen over the weekend during the season. And I was hiking with some people, and I had to set the roster move up on the website through my phone with almost no service. On a random Saturday afternoon. That's just the work. When the work happens and they need your attention, it's not when you want to. It's not like when you have the right kind of mood. It's we need you to get this out right now.
It's got to be done. So 60 hours minimum. I mean, that's probably a good week. 60 hours. Oh man, I get some downtime. So again, guys, find Zach on Twitter at Zach Selby WC. Throw him some love, throw him some read his work, right? It's great work, first of all, but obviously, and then there's a lot of work going into it as well, the writing and the podcasting. You find all of that, of course, at commanders.com. Thanks for being on the show today, Zach. Look forward to having you on again soon, and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, bright and early out there on the practice field.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
A big shout out once again to Zach Selby, staff writer of commanders.com. Not the last time you're going to be seeing or hearing from him. We want to thank you again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast first listen or view of the day. Come back for our next episode. In the meantime, though, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Audacy app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. If you got questions or topics for this show, send them into LockedOnWashingtonCommanders@gmail.com or call in and be a part of the show by dialing 301-615-3577. That's going to do it for today, Commanders fans. Thanks again for joining us. We are free and available on all platforms. I'm David Harrison, writer for SI.com's Fan Nation, and for my co-host Chris Russell of the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thank you for joining me right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.